We hear a lot of talk these days, pretty much every day, every minute, about popular anger at the elites, our political elites in particular. The elites seem to be unsurprised by this anger. They don't quite understand why people are so angry at them. Our state Supreme Court, who I think they're called elites, I think we're taken aback, very surprised by how angry people were at the Ten Commandments decision. It's what we've been calling a pitchfork moment. One of those moments in which a decision our elites have made is completely and utterly reviled by the majority. They simply don't understand why that's happening. But there were a lot of us out there who were surprised that people were surprised. And frankly, we were surprised that it took so long for people to get angry. Most people focused on the decision, at least the part of it, that dealt with the state constitution. Most people weren't aware of the fact that we have this language called the Blaine Amendment, and because the court had not relied on it and used it for years, and it sat dormant, as it should have, for very long. And it was surprising that the court unearthed it to use it to get rid of the Ten Commandments on it, when they could have easily relied on federal constitutional law to do the very same thing, causing lots of problems for them that they didn't need to have. Although I think people would have been just as angry had they used federal doctrine instead of state. But I think for those of us who were surprised that people didn't know about this, the truth is that for 50 years, the Supreme Court of the United States has held that government cannot endorse religion. Now keep in mind, what we're talking about here is not that government can't establish a state religion. That's always been clear, at least since the 14th Amendment was incorporated against the states. What we're talking about is the courts are telling us that government can't say, can't speak, can't articulate that religion is good, that we prefer religion to non-religion. And federal courts over the last decades have ordered the dismantling of war memorials in cities, Christmas displays. Those of us in Edmond, remember, they've censored your city seal because you have the temerity to put a cross on it. Look what these cases are about. Again, it's not about establishing religion. It's about whether government can actually prefer religion to the absence of religion. The courts tell us, contrary to our nation's history and our society's most cherished beliefs, that the community cannot take sides, even verbally, on the question of God. In most of these cases in recent years, Justice Scalia always says. And he always has this long list, it's amusing every time he does it, where he quotes presidential Thanksgiving proclamation after presidential Thanksgiving proclamation, statement after statement of political leaders, all endorsing God. And he points out that Thomas Jefferson, right, the saint of deism, you can have that, went, when he was president, to services in the Capitol building. And Scalia's like, really? And the government can't endorse religion? No, the court says the government has to remain neutral, even if it's all that's involved is putting a monument or starting a ceremony with a prayer. The Constitution requires, the majority of the court has said, as Richard John Newhouse so famously put it, the naked public square. Keep in mind that no other system of belief is treated this way. The president can, as he did after the Supreme Court's gay marriage decision, the president decided, let's put rainbow flags up on the White House to celebrate the gay marriage decision, because he wanted to articulate a message from the White House. But God forbid any future president decides to put a cross on Easter or any candidacy on Christmas. That he won't be able to do if the law doesn't change. The most important and contested of our public squares, as a glance as the most important establishment of our cases will tell you, is the public school. That's where the point of the secular sphere is aimed. The goal of what most people call, including a strict separationist, although probably a better term for them would be the eliminationist, is the eradication of all signs or discussion of faith in the public school. Now, to be fair to the United States Supreme Court, the law, their decisions are actually more reasonable than you would know by the practice at most schools. The court, which is a lot more sensitive to public opinion than most people believe, has made it clear, at least they try to, that teachers, staff, and students can pray on their own at school. They can read their own Bibles at school. and schools can teach religion as an academic subject. In other words, you can study religion, but you can't say it's true. But as those of us who follow the disputes in the news or in law reports will tell you, school administrators often don't know or don't care about what the law actually is. Every time I teach religion in the Constitution, my law students are shocked to find out, and these are cases that have actually happened, that schools have banned students and teachers from reading the Bible at their desks during study hall. Can't have it on your desk, they're told. Students are forbidden from discussing the Bible in their papers or in their valedictory speeches that they were selected to give by the students. Coaches and players are forbidden from praying at football games. Even if the prayer is voluntary, they're just doing it on their own because can't have that religion in the air. The assumption that many public school administrators make is that all signs of religion have to be eradicated, lest anyone conclude that the school has endorsed religion. Can't have that. The argument the eliminationists make is that the school isn't being hostile towards religion. We're just being neutral. We should stick, they say, to teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. But the naked public square, or the neutral public square, is impossible to maintain. Something is going to fill that void. For one thing, schools teach a lot more, or they should anyway, than reading, writing, and arithmetic. How do you handle the question of faith in biology class? Or physics class? More importantly, perhaps, how do you talk about American history? Or European history? Or the history of any culture for that matter, without talking about the importance of Christianity or other faiths? How do you talk about sociology or government or anything about contemporary society without talking about the importance of faith to the American people? The court would say, you can discuss Christianity, but you have to be really careful in how you talk about it. Again, you talk about it, but don't ever say it's true. But many schools and teachers have just concluded that the safe bet, and that's really what it is, they just want to play it safe, that for legal and social reasons, just don't talk about religion at all. Just keep it out entirely from the bounds of the school. Don't let anyone see it, don't let anyone practice it, don't let it infect the school environment. So what education do our children receive? The schools aren't neutral. They have to have some perspective, some viewpoint. You can't teach without one. If you can't be taught from a religious point of view, you have to be taught from a secular perspective, what we used to call secular humanism. In biology, you're taught that only the most extreme form of evolutionary theory. No one mentions the Catholic Church actually accepts forms of evolution argument. You're taught that the American Revolution is only about taxes, when in fact it was largely about religion as well. You're taught, if we actually are allowed to mention them at all, that the framers were all like Jefferson, they were all deists, when in fact Jefferson's point of view is the extreme minority among the framers. The central role of religion in the abolitionists and civil rights movement is airbrushed out entirely. Today's society is studied and understood only through an empirical lens, which is really a materialist lens. Children are taught that people are motivated by their economic or physical needs or desires, not by matters of the soul. Now, some of you may be wondering that if the court has been doing this for so long, forbidding the endorsement of religion for so long, and these barriers have been most strictly enforced in public schools, which they have, why is it taking so long for people to find out this is going on, to perceive it, to understand the problems of the naked public square? I think it took a long time in large part because the full effects of the secularization of public schools took a long time to sink in. Because at least for one generation, say until 1985 or so, our schools were staffed by students, by teachers, principals I should say, who grew up in the world before any mention of the Browns. A faith was ruthlessly hunted down and eliminated from school. They just continued to do mostly what they were doing. But for the last 3 decades or so, we see the old generation of teachers finally replaced by the products of the politicized post-1970s university. Our schools are now run by people who have never lived in a world in which schools recognized and endorsed community belief. They accept the idea of the neutral school, in which only science produces truth, and focusing only on the measurable as, ironically enough, an article of faith. They're not forced to accept the naked public square, as the previous generation was. They enthusiastically believe in it, even if they're people of personal faith. They believe that the school should be neutral, should be empty, that religion should be taught only. And then we wonder why surveys show a decline of religious belief in the millennial generation. It's not our children becoming atheists, it's that they're confused. Of course they are. Even if we try to teach them faith at home or at church, anything we tell them is going to be swamped by what they learn every day at school or in the all-pervasive media. The culture, the internet, television, film, music, that's what really influences their peer group, which if we're honest, we'll admit has a lot more influence over that than we parents do. And then we wonder why, given the content of our culture, we see an increase in both highly sexualized behavior of sexting and out-of-wedlock birth rates. As we saw in response to the Ten Commandments case, many Oklahomans, Americans across the country, believe that the solution to this problem is to push for a change in law. If you just get religion back in the public square, everything will be fine. In the Ten Commandments case, for example, the immediate response, and I'm all for it, is to repeal the Blame Act, the provision the court relied on. Let's get rid of it. Let's have a state constitution where we don't have this blot. Again, I'm all for it. And if we assume that succeeds, the next step is to get the U.S. Supreme Court to change its mind on these out clauses, which, by the way, I think they're about to do. I went to public school, but I also went to lots of private schools, so I can count to 5. And I count 5 votes on the Supreme Court in favor of reversing the endorsement doctrine. So actually, we're in good shape on that issue. So is everything going to be okay? Assuming we repeal the Blame Act, it's going to be right. Of course, religion is fine. Community be able to endorse religion, happy ending, right? No way. Even if all that happens, even in the best case scenario, it's unlikely that the Supreme Court of the United States, certainly not the Supreme Court of Oklahoma, will ever permit religion to have a meaningful presence in public schools. That's not going to happen. But even if public schools were again allowed to express or endorse the community's beliefs, we could never go back to the days when the public school, which it once did, effectively transmitted the community's beliefs to its children. We can never go back. Because over the last several decades, our nation has changed far too much for the school to serve this function. Where we once had a powerful social consensus on the core principles of morality, we are now deeply divided. Our political polarization did not produce itself. It did not come from nowhere. It was and is caused by the conflict between different systems of fundamental beliefs in our society. The public school, even if it could do so legally, will not, and probably could not, even if it wanted to, choose between society's diverse points of view. Instead, no matter what happens, the public school will continue to empty the public square, which we know is not neutral or fair in reality. It is a defeat for believers, and if we don't change course, it's going to lead to a further waning of religious faith and the traditional morality it sustains. So what can we do? My point of view, and Brady said, I'm more than happy to take the discussion, because I know that everybody is on the same page. But I think that what we can do is we have to accept that our principles and traditions cannot be effectively transmitted by the public school, or with some important exceptions, such as our dedicated homeschool families, by teaching children at home or at church. The culture of modernity is too strong for that. Our best hope for passing on most cherished beliefs is to educate our children in a school that will teach and will not ignore or undermine what we believe. There is no substitute, particularly in a world in which they are unremittingly bombarded with unhealthy cultural messages, for sending our children to a school that will at every turn reinforce and not undermine what we believe. At my children's school, as at so many of the schools represented by people in this room, the public square is clothed with the values of Christianity and Western civilization. We have a dedicated Bible class, daily chapel, and spiritual values pervade the curriculum and all the extracurricular activities. Parents don't have to fight against with their kids here at school. The school is an ally, not an obstacle. So what stops parents from choosing these kinds of schools? Money. Pure and simple. We at OCPA, as in other organizations, have commissioned polls over the years that show, given the option, Parents will use the state funds allocated to their child to choose a school that transmits their values. It's important to also look at the flip side of what they're telling us. If they're not allowed to use their funds as they see fit, they say they are economically coerced to send their children to schools they know are not the best institutions to prepare them for life. There are thousands of Oklahomans then who do not need to be convinced that a private school can help preserve their way of life. They only need help to send their children there. That, of course, is why education safety counselors are so important. They will empower parents to not only seek the best academic environment for their children, but the best moral environment as well. Our children need to learn that the principles of good character count just as much as the principles of science and mathematics. ESAs will provide parents with a gift that has up until now only been bestowed upon the wealthy. The capacity set to send your children to a school you know is best for their soul as well as their mind. But they will do even more than that. By for the first time enabling society to satisfy the demand for education that honors and transmits our morals and traditions, ESAs will lead to the creation of many more of these schools. We will build a new, vital sector of education, which, to be sure, some schools in that sector will fail, but many, many others, and I predict many more, will succeed and become jewels of the community. If we create institutions to satisfy the demand for traditional education we know already exists, these institutions, as they become more numerous and well-known, will attract other families who may not have recognized before that they have a hunger for an education rooted in moral principle. I cannot think of any other single public policy that has a better chance of inspiring the next great awakening of moral and spiritual belief. That is our only chance of stemming the cultural rot. That is the true source of our social pathologies. Let me also say a word for those of us, those of you, me too, who view the world too often through a more practical and political lens. We are witnessing the first political cycle in which the conservative movement faces a severe danger of permanent fracture. I have never seen this much anger turned on ourselves. We need policies that can unite libertarians and traditionalists, economic and social conservatives, Tea Party evangelicals. ESAs fit that bill better than any other policy you can devise. Instead of angering libertarians by using public institutions to indicate their values, ESAs empower religious and social conservatives to spread their beliefs through private institutions. ESAs, by allowing parents to spend their funds on a variety of educational services, satisfy the libertarian urge for maximizing choice. Because ESAs are funded with existing government funds, small government conservatives can find little fault with that. Even those conservatives who are adamant about preserving public school funding should be placated by the fact that ESAs only take a portion of the funds allocated to each child. A significant percentage of the money remains in public coffers. Everyone wins. Perhaps most important, ESAs provide political leaders with the best answer to the question that is on everyone's mind. How can we, in a time of economic and fiscal strain, directly improve the lives of middle and working class Oklahomans? Tax cuts are good economics. I wrote maybe, but then I realized it was me speaking. Are good economics. But for those, we have to admit that, but for those of modest incomes, they do not provide an easily understood appreciable benefit. They just don't. The benefit of ESAs, on the other hand, is easy to understand and appreciate. You now have thousands of dollars to spend on the education of your child that you did not have before. As conservatives, it is an article of our faith that parents will use that money to help their children make more than a good living. They will learn to make a good life. I'll be happy to take